At this point, I'm going to call on Michael to give us a summary of those comments, and then I'm going to call on the group to give us some feedback to see if this accurately reflects what I think is an evolving consensus on many of these points. So, Michael.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for the comments. I just want to say real briefly, I found yesterday's conversation very helpful from Colorado State University, specific and with our online education, which we've been doing for about 4 years, online distance education. So I found yesterday's conversation quite enlightening. I'll briefly go through what I found here, and Paul did a really good job of saying that we're designing a process. And what we're trying to do here is embrace this disruption that we're seeing in our marketplace. So we've got really just kind of 4 areas of focus that I'm going to hit on real briefly. Financial, content, and then policies. And then within each one of those there's some constraints. But in the financial arena, we're looking at the membership dues are probably a big conversation we want to have. I think there's general consensus around the money going back to the consortium if revenue is generated. The numbers vary anywhere from 10 to 25% in those conversations. We're also looking at, in the content arena, we need to define our target audiences. We had discussions in our group that we would like to focus on certificates and diplomas, leave degrees to the bodies that issue degrees. So we need to really define that target audience. The Creative Commons license has come up in 3 groups, and I think there's also a general consensus around ownership needs to live with the developer, the content expert that provided the content. Around the policies, it sounds like there's a lot of need for, and this would be a heavy chore for the steering committee, I think, but there needs to be a focus on these government bodies that we need policy changes and or approvals before moving forward with really any of the next steps. MOUs with various stakeholders. And then I'll leave with just some parting thoughts that I had here at the end that I think was said really well. We're focusing on a supplemental type of education here, where we focus on the learner, teaching, learning, and a quality control mechanism. And finally, I think that it came up in multiple groups, and it was very passionate in our group. Online education is not going to be the end-all for teaching, and especially the number of students that we're talking about. So how do we infuse this face-to-face and practical opportunity, especially when we're talking about the sheer number of students that may be in this program. So that's kind of the brief synopsis I have. I'd love to open it up for some questions